Spider-Man absolutely changed the superhero movie genre forever in a way that few others have. All of a sudden, everyone was just rushing to get their own superhero franchises going, and one of these other would-be franchises was Universal's Hulk starring Eric Bana. Sadly, it failed to do what Spider-Man did, and while reappraisals have painted the movie in a better light, it's still far from everybody's favorite Marvel movie. But what if these two had crossed over? So now this crossover takes place in between the events of Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3, which is around the time that Hulk 2 is supposed to come out anyway, so let's say 2005 or 6. So Peter and MJ are now officially together, and New York is actually starting to unite in their love of Spider-Man, so things are going very well for Peter. He and MJ actually get to have a movie where they're not going through any problems, because honestly, they deserve to have at least one happy movie together. I mean, just one, come on. So now Peter has his police scanner set up in his room, and he hears reports of a large green creature attacking Times Square. So Peter goes off and MJ gives him a good luck kiss. So now we see indeed that the Hulk is now in New York City, and the police are shooting at him, which is only making him angrier and bigger. So now Spider-Man swings in, and now I know all of you are going to say that Spider-Man would lose easily, but I don't think he would necessarily. He has very quick reflexes and agility, and I think he could hold his own at least for a while. But in the end, Hulk does win after smashing Spider-Man around a little bit. So now we see that General Ross has actually found Bruce and chased him all the way back to America. Now the Hulk was actually drawn to Betty Ross, who he couldn't find since General Ross moved her. So he's been going from city to city just trying to find Betty. So now we see the Hulk manage to escape from Ross and Spider-Man, completely unharmed of course, though Peter later swings up to the roof and we get another oh my back moment because those are honestly really damn funny. So now we later see General Ross talking to his daughter on the phone, who's heard the news about Bruce still being alive after the events of the first movie, and she's pissed that her father is still hunting him down. He of course tries to justify it, but she just hangs up the phone before he can, and she prepares to fly out to New York. Ross then turns around and starts talking to Emil Blonsky, who for simplicity's sake I'm just going to keep Tim Roth. We saw him in the previous fight against the Hulk, and Ross tells Blonsky exactly how dangerous the Hulk can be, and who he used to be. So now we later see Peter bringing photos of Spider-Man and the Hulk to J. Jonah Jameson, who's just ecstatic that Spider-Man kinda just got his ass kicked in public. Now he and Hoffman try to come up with a name, and this is the first time we actually hear him being called the Hulk. They struggle with a name for him, and Jonah's just like, what can we call this big hulking? Wait, I got it. The Hulk. And Hoffman's just like, oh, that sounds incredible. Jonah then smiles and is like, even better, the Incredible Hulk. So now we later see Hulk calm down back into Bruce Banner again. And we see him actually go into Joe's Pizza, because I think it'd be funny to see Mr. Aziz again. Plus it shows the fact that Peter and Bruce really aren't all that different from each other. He tries to get a job there, and he nearly actually gets one, but then he gets flashbacks to the first night that he and Betty ever had together, where he couldn't afford to take her somewhere fancy, so they just ordered a pizza. And the sad memory makes him nearly turn into the Hulk, and so Bruce has to rush out, obviously not getting the job. So now we see Peter return home absolutely covered in bruises, and MJ is just all over him with concern, and Peter just smiles and is like, you should see the other guy. We then see Betty Ross on an airplane on her way to New York, and she watches the footage of Hulk vs. Spider-Man, and she just mutters Bruce's name to herself with worry and a hint of fear. So now we see Bruce trying to adjust to life in the city. He manages to actually find himself a non-stressful job, and learns to start getting better control of his emotions through breathing exercises. Now one night he walks down the street, and he sees a house fire, because house fires are always great in Spider-Man movies, and we see Bruce have to try and rescue people as himself, which reminds us that he's a hero in more ways than one. He's a hero as Bruce Banner as well as the Hulk. Now it's also exhilarating because he's trying not to turn into the Hulk while he's saving these people. Bruce, however, is sadly not able to keep control of his emotions, and the entire building collapses as he turns into the Hulk. Now, Spider-Man tries to help out, but it's too late, and the people who were trapped in the building die tragically. So we get Hulk vs. Spider-Man round 2 after this, and this time Blonsky is sent in to try and take out both of them, because you can't tell me the military wouldn't be interested in Spider-Man as well. So Hulk and Spider-Man ended up actually working together a bit to escape, before Betty then finally arrives. However, she ends up accidentally being shot by Blonsky. Now, Betty is okay, and she doesn't die, but Hulk is now very, very angry, and he takes down the soldiers before storming off, not knowing that Betty's still alive. So now he sinks back into a dark, lonely corner of New York, where he turns back into Bruce, and Bruce watches the news footage of Betty being shot, and like the Hulk, thinks she's dead. So in that moment, he decides that he's had enough of being the Hulk. So he breaks into a lab, possibly an Oscorp lab, where he decides to hammer himself with a ton of gamma radiation in an attempt to, well, take his own life. However, Ross is able to track Bruce down and has him arrested. Stupidly, though, Blonsky lingers in the room too long and ends up being exposed to the extra gamma radiation, which turns him into the Abomination. So now, in between all that, we see Peter talking to Mary Jane about how he saw the way the Hulk cared about the woman that was shot, and how it made him scared of something like that happening to Mary Jane. The pair then get a sweet moment to just be in love and be there for each other. So now the Abomination starts attacking the city, and Spider-Man swings in to fight him, initially thinking that it's the Hulk, but this time it's much, much worse than the Hulk. An entire city block has been pummeled, and Spider-Man, sorry to say, really doesn't have a chance in hell against them on his own. So now meanwhile, we see Bruce is reunited with Betty Ross, though soldiers keep the two of them apart from each other. We then basically get the same scene we got in The Incredible Hulk, where Ross reluctantly lets Bruce go to stop Abomination. So we see Hulk and Spider-Man team up to take out Abomination, who is then secured by Ross. Betty then approaches the Hulk, who runs off with her in his arms, off into the unknown, and we then see Spider-Man go off to do the same thing with Mary Jane. So you guys may have noticed that I gave Hulk more attention than Spider-Man in this, and I'm sorry about that, but hear me out. It's just that, the Hulk only got one movie, and Spider-Man, he got 3, and I think it's only fair that Bruce Banner gets a bit more attention than Spider-Man, because, he would still have Spider-Man 3 coming out like a year or 2 after this. So, while Hulk would probably not have another movie, unless this movie did, really well, which it probably would, but, there's no guarantee, so. Yeah, so that's why I went with Hulk getting more of a focus, because I honestly think he's the character that needed more exploration by this point. And that's also the reason why I did decide to use a Hulk villain instead of a Spider-Man villain, as well as the fact that, well, just to be quite honest with you guys, I don't think most of Spider-Man's villains would stand a chance against the Hulk. Now, I'm sorry, I love Spider-Man's villains, but I don't think most of them would last that long in a fight with the Hulk. And I needed to give Hulk an adversary that he and Spider-Man would have to team up to fight. So I decided to go with Abomination. I considered the Red Hulk, but I think it makes more sense to do Abomination and then Red Hulk. So, yeah, you can pretend that Red Hulk would be the villain of, Hulk 2 or Hulk 3 or whatever, would happen after this. You can pretend that if you want, or they could have gone with the Leader. I thought about doing the Leader as the villain in this, but, I just didn't think he warranted both of them teaming up together. I thought Abomination would work better. Not to mention, I thought there was already enough focus on the Hulk story, and I didn't want to throw in 2 Hulk villains. So, yeah, I hope you guys can forgive me for that. But yeah, and I decided to have this on its own movie instead of, in an established movie, because, I did that with The Punisher. I did a Spider-Man Punisher crossover that took place in the middle of Spider-Man 3, but that was easy to cross over without, ruining the rest of the story. I'm sorry to say it, but I really do think that the Hulk needed more of a focus than Spider-Man in this crossover, and obviously that would kind of ruin Spider-Man 3. It's got his name on the title, so, I just thought that this crossover was too big to have in an existing movie. So I decided to make it in between movies instead of in an existing one, sorry. So forgive me about that. That's just my personal choice. I'm sure some of you will disagree with it, but I just think that's the choice that makes the most sense. But yeah, and I really do hope that you guys enjoyed this. I know you guys have been waiting forever for this crossover. I'm really sorry to keep you waiting. I'm not gonna lie, crossovers are kind of a pain in the ass to make, because a lot goes into them. You have to think about what works, to their characters. You have to rewatch all the movies before you can do it. And you have to make sure that the crossover is justified. You have to make sure that, they have a reason to team up with each other, which is why when I did the Blade Spider-Man crossover, I had them fighting Morbius, because that's a common foe that they both have. So I thought it would make sense. So I know Abomination's not a Spider-Man villain, but really that's the best I think I could do with that. I mean, yeah, as I said, Red Hulk, but you get what I mean. But yeah, now would I have wanted to see a crossover between these two? Yeah, honestly. Eric Bana, man, he's an underrated Hulk, and I really do think that he deserved to play him another time. Even if Bana apparently wasn't that interested in playing him a second time. But, you know, I really don't think the first movie did his acting chops justice, because he went on to do Munich after Hulk, and Munich was so good. He was so good in Munich. And it just reminds me about how much better he could have been with a better executed vision behind him as the Hulk. Not that Ang Lee's a bad, visionary, but he just wasn't the right guy to direct that movie, in my opinion. But yeah, it would have been really cool to see Eric Bana get another shot, especially with Tobey Maguire, who's my favorite Spider-Man. So it just would have been really, really cool, in my opinion, to see that. And it would have been really fun to see, how J. Jonah Jameson would react to somebody like the Hulk. I just think that would be really, really funny, honestly. But anyway, guys, let me know in the comments down below. Do you absolutely loathe this scenario, or do you think that it was worth the wait? Let me know all about that in the comments down below. Also, give me more what-if recommendations in the comments down below, whether that's about Spider-Man, the Hulk, or any other Marvel character, or any non-Marvel character that you can think of. Also, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and share it with all of your friends on all your various social media platforms. And speaking of social media, don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Rinzler_Productions, and don't forget to ring that notification bell, and stay updated on all of my future videos. I upload brand new videos every single morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so ring the notification bell, and I'll see you all tomorrow morning in the next video.